We're here with Jason Bade. He's the co-founder of Pico, which is a software that empowers online businesses to be built around your community. So he's going to go through how to design a model for your community and show you what Pico is all about. So yeah, take it away.
Excellent. And just as you're doing that, I'm realizing that I lost my window where I have my slides. So
no worries.
Oh, there it is. Okay, wait, it's in full screen. That's why. I don't build the product at Pico, as maybe is clear. I barely know how to use the products that are here on our screen. See how this all set up. Okay, hold on. There we are. Nope. Keynote. There we are. Google Chrome. Okay, I think I am sharing the right screen. Am I sharing the right screen?
Yeah, it looks great.
Pico building a paid community. Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Amy. So this is going to be pretty quick. I'll run through some stuff that I talk to a lot of prospective entrepreneurs who are launching something from scratch, usually like a paid model of some sort from scratch. And then, we're happy to chat with you all about questions you have. So, a little bit about, there we go. A little about, there I am. A little bit about us, Pico. We are a tech stack that aims to sit kind of in the center of all of the different tools you might be using with respect to a CMS of your choice, ESP of your choice, and then Stripe is the payments gateway that we're built on. So we sit in between all those things. Really, people, some of the customers you see here, they come to us because a specific platform is too much of a mold. It's really easy to go validate selling a specific type of format in a very kind of simple pricing, whether it's a newsletter or a community or kind of whatever your entry point into your audience might be. And then at some point, folks will come to us when they need a little bit more sophistication around CRM, around customer support. It's one thing to have 500 members, it's another thing to have 10, 20, 30,000. And then just flexibility around formatting, around pricing, around what kind of products are you offering, a paid course, a paid newsletter, just a paid community, all three of those things. Are you doing different offers to different folks? Are you running different marketing campaigns for different folks? So that's who we really focus on. So here's, I was telling Amy about this. We're going to be building some tutorials soon in MakerPad for our new platform. I've been holding back. I really want to jump into MakerPad and show off Pico, but the thing is, our current platform is just so, it's ugly. I open it up and I'm like, I can't look anymore because I've been living in the next generation of our platform, which is going to come online probably January, February. I think we're going to have it live in a public preview in January. And it's just really, it's so exciting. It's going to have so many features that are pretty cool that hopefully you'll be able to use even if you don't have any paid products yet. So, for example, we do checkout, installs on your site. It also lives on Pico landing pages, so you don't need to have a standalone website, but if you do, Pico interlays right over. Signups, lead capture, pop-ups, any sort of lead capture forms or like newsletter sign-up forms, using single sign-on, logging people in. Pico does all of that. We have these pre-built kind of menus like you see here that you will be able to customize with your own fonts and colors and links and icons that kind of act as the home base between your customers or your community, your audience members, and you, including managing payment relationships and so on. On the back end, we're really leaning into two things. One is making it really easy for you to iterate different products, whether it's a paid newsletter, whether it's memberships, whether it's paywalled content on your website, whether it's just a simple donation kind of a landing page, playing around with pop-ups and all that. We make it really easy so you don't have to call up a developer or designer necessarily to do those iterations as you're figuring out what your free to paid to super paid premium, product funnels might look like. And yeah, so this is what our admin is going to look like in the new version of Pico early next year. And then on customer management, like I was mentioning, we've spent a lot of time with businesses who already have communities. These aren't businesses that are necessarily the ones in MakerPad. These are local news, for example. We have a ton of local news customers that, they might be 10 years old. And these folks aren't on MakerPad. These folks probably don't even know what the phrase no code means. But these are teams of entrepreneurs who are managing a business and managing a successful paid membership, paid community, using content to pull people in, active across a website, newsletters, social media, the communities commenting, etc. And we've learned a lot by serving those folks. What are all the customer support needs? What are all the processes and workflows that someone who is managing a scaling business, how do we save you time, right? How do we keep you out of your admin panel and your CRM essentially? How do we keep you out of that, every week instead of spending hours on support and other things like this? And so our new CRM product is going to be a pretty powerful way to manage your users, manage your audience, kind of see where who's engaging where, being able to help them out, being able to better market to them and segment them, etc. Okay, so onto the less Pico-y part of I'm not going to really talk about Pico again. I'm just going to talk about what I talk to folks about when they are either transitioning from a free product to thinking about turning on a paid product of some sort, paid newsletter. And I'll say, by the way, very few of our customers primarily run a paid community. So I'm going to speak from an experience of folks that are usually launching a paid newsletter, they're launching a membership program, they're launching paywalls on their site. And then I'd say maybe half of them, community is a component of that. And so I can, that's where this is relevant, but oftentimes community is not the only aspect of that. And indeed, the main primary product that they're selling is related to content or even just a sense of belonging, that you are paying for the civic service of journalism in your community or whatever it is. So a lot of this is probably like not terribly original to you, but I'm going to go through it anyway because I think this sets up a really good framework. And even if this is not new to you, it's good to kind of be reminded of this and think through, like, the scaffolding of like, oh wait, product market fit, yeah, that's right. And kind of like think through with this hour we have how it relates to the audience you're serving, the community you're serving, and then the product you might already have and you might already have people paying for. So for those of you who don't know, product market fit, Andy Ratcliffe, who's a pretty well-known VC entrepreneur, it's this idea that you have customers. By the way, are my notifications showing? Hold on, let me hit do not disturb. I had it on and then off and now back on. Okay, so product market fit's basically it's the simple way of saying it is, are there customers willing to pay for some value proposition that you are putting out into the world? Now, of course, there's always early adopters that maybe don't send a signal for like the rest of the market. And so that's a market sizing question. We can get to that later. In general, the world is pretty big. Usually if you have product market fit with enough people, there's a pretty good size. There's a pretty good sized market that will follow those folks. But the core aspect of product market fit is simply, are you providing something that people want to pay for? And so if you're thinking about a paid community, you have to ask yourself, okay, for the folks that I want to pay me for this community, why would they do that? What is the value proposition that is going to be worth not just, the exact amount of money that you are asking them, but how can you make sure that the value that most people who you are going to ask to pay for your community, how can you make sure that that value is at least 2 or 3 or 4 times more than what you're going to ask them to pay? Really good signs you have product market fit, by the way, is that you're kind of doing everything wrong. Things are breaking. Maybe the experience is really shitty. The login doesn't work very well. So who knows, right? But yeah, people are like throwing money at you because they can't wait to get in. This is one of the beauties of Kickstarter, is that Kickstarter was a way to kind of validate product market fit before you even build product. So product market fit, and it sounds so trivial, but you have no idea how many folks are Pico customers that, they had a free site, tons of traffic, tons of audience, or maybe lots of engagement on Twitter or on Instagram. And then they're like, I'm going to launch a paid product. I'm going to put some of my content behind a paywall. I'm going to launch a paid community. And it ends up that like the product market fit that those entrepreneurs had with a free product just did not translate. No, everyone was happy to not pay for it, but they were not happy. There's not enough value to justify getting out their credit card and paying. So product market fit. Okay, here's some nice quotes. The moment when a startup finally finds widespread set of customers that resonate, the market pulls the product out of the startup. Kind of this, what I was saying, like you launch this bare bones thing. Maybe for you all, it's just maybe it's a Twitter group. It's like you have this DMs going among folks, or maybe it's just the same people that are always responding to the same threads. Maybe it's threads in Reddit or Indie Hacker or Hacker News, depending on where you hang out. Maybe it's threads in MakerPad, although I'm not sure you want to compete with the MakerPad community that we are here a part of. But like, my point is that it can start pretty small. It could be a Slack thing, it could be whatever, and then you build into it. But yeah, anyway, so the market pulls the product out of you. It's the food the dog wants, the dogs want to eat. Like I said, it's when I like the phrase, it's when you're succeeding in spite of yourself. And it's like you're doing everything wrong, branding sucks, name sucks, like nothing's working, and yet somehow people are still trying to throw money at you to deliver this product because it serves such a fundamental need. So when I think about what kinds of value might you produce then? And so again, bear in mind that this, my lens is folks who are not just doing pure communities, but they're also doing content and other sorts of experience type products. Part of the beauty of Pico is we have a very wide range of customer types, from folks doing yoga and music lessons all the way through to journalism and other things. But here are the types of potential value. Time spent. So that's like the pure, like, I want to spend an hour on Netflix, or I want to spend an hour being entertained. And if you can compete with time spent, that's amazing, but it's hard to compete with time spent unless there's other value that you're providing. Expertise. This is what a lot of who are people trying to build up their careers, or investors, people who depend on information to make business decisions. Status, I was getting at, this is, you are in a community, but being a paid member of that community confers some status that folks might be willing to pay for. Information, that's similar to expertise. I guess maybe I would say that expertise is more, you are paying someone to like give you the very best opinion or the very best insight. Information is more, I'm in my, we had a number of customers this year that built out products around COVID because they're local news, local journalism. We have about, 200 local news publishers. And, COVID, everyone needed to know what shops were closed, what schools were opening when, et cetera, et cetera. Information can be very valuable, even if it's delivered in a very succinct format. Entertainment, kind of, time spent, those are very similar. Completion is kind of a weird value prop, but the idea that I've gotten through everything I need to get through today. Like, here is the summary of everything you might have missed, and here it is. So this idea that, yeah, I've completed the magazine, I've completed the book, like that is its own type of value prop. Savings is sort of the inverse of that, which is or not inverse, but the complementary side of that, which is, you are saving me time. I don't have to go look for this information elsewhere. I don't have to go look for deals. I don't have to go search for the furniture I want to buy or whatever it is. Maybe you're building a product and you go to MakerPad because MakerPad helps you really easily find, it saves you time and effort in researching different tools. Community, that's a little bit tautological, but the general sense of community, hanging out with friends, feeling part of something else. Purpose, anyway, experience, memories, generational connection. There's also, the point is that value prop alone is not just here's an article or here's a piece of content or here's a video that I made and you're consuming, and therefore there's value. That is not a value prop by itself. I won't get into bundling. That's a conversation for a different topic, perhaps. And then how do you find product market fit? And I kind of touched on this. Need finding. Talk to the folks. Talk to your early adopters. Talk to folks that you're engaging with, maybe outside of your current community, but they're on, like I said, on Twitter, or if you have an email list, talk to the folks who are opening your emails the most. It's as Andy Radcliffe says, it's this dance where you're throwing out some things and you're seeing if people bite, and you're throwing out some other things, seeing if people bite, and then like really digging deep. Then when it's when the market pulls it out of you. So you should not force product market fit. If you're like, I'm going to build a community for my audience, and like no one shows up, that's probably telling you something. It's not like, oh, if I just make it more perfect, if I just program it better, then everyone's going to show up. Highly unlikely. I mean, not to say it won't happen. And by the way, building communities themselves as a standalone product, really tough. Like, it does take a lot of work to curate and to really kind of activate the community and get those feedback loops going, where you kind of have this virtuous cycle of people contributing and having good content there and whatnot. But if you're really trying to force it, there's a good sign that maybe your audience doesn't seek community. Maybe that's not the route to a paid product for your audience. And then optimizing price per product. I'm not going to get into that here, but don't worry about price. Price will come later. You'll have plenty of time to figure out what the price is, what the right tier structure might be if you're going to do good, better, best. Don't be concerned about that now. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about funnels and kind of like how marketing and building what we call audience funnels at Pico, I guess you could call them community funnels, is related to, like, it's actually endogenous to your product creation. So you should be thinking about marketing and the channels that you're going to find and grow your community, your audience with, at the same time that you're designing product and features for them. And then as you think about how you sequence your marketing. So, let me skip here to, I borrowed this from Brian Balfour. So this is like an expansion of the idea of product market fit that I hadn't come across until actually relatively recently. So here, is there a pointer? I think there's a pointer, yeah. So, here you have the product market fit that I spoke of. But, product channel fit, that's this idea that, like, hey, well, where does my market hang out? Okay. And what I actually think that there should be, here we go, channel. So I would actually adapt this graph. I think that there's more of a channel market fit, which is, okay, well, where does my market hang out? And how am I going to take the product that I have for them if they arrive and connect that up to the market where they live? And is that going to happen through like Twitter? Is that going to happen through Instagram? Is that going to happen through Google and SEO and my website? How can I make sure that the product I have fits into channels where my market lives, in other words? So for example, the no-code community, one could say that channel market fit with them is MakerPad, Twitter for sure. Those are the places that the no-code community hangs out. And then once you find your channel market fit, then it's about thinking about what kind of product can you fit into that channel that pulls people in. How do you go to where that market lives and make sure that you're teasing them with the right, what are the lead generation kind of products that you can put out there? Maybe it's Twitter threads, right? If you're on Twitter. Maybe it's links to articles on your website or posts on your website that are then going to create the lead capture opportunity to pull someone into your community, right? So kind of thinking through, and you can see how I relate this to building a marketing funnel. You've got to think about not just product market fit, but now you have to start thinking about how do you scale beyond the initial base you have, and what what aspects of where that market lives. Maybe the early adopters live in Twitter, but like the rest of that space lives elsewhere. How are you going to go get them? And how does the funnel you build on top of your product relate to where those people live? So I'll speak about an example. This is actually not a customer of Pico. He's waiting for us to build one feature, and then he's going to come over. But I've known him for a long time, and he's on Memberful right now. And basically, this guy was an executive. I won't say what industry it was, because that might give away what his site is. But this guy's an executive, and he in an industry that he's an expert in. And so he decided to leave and start writing. He loves writing, so he started writing about it. And he found very quickly that he kind of had two distinct audiences that were attracted to his expertise, to his content. One was sort of executives that just wanted a quick daily brief. What's the latest that I need to know about? So you can think about value props there around like completion, information, expertise, etc. And savings, right? Time savings. They didn't have time to read long reports. They didn't have time to read through Wall Street Journal or wherever it was, scroll Twitter all day. They just needed like, what do I need to know today? And the product that fit that market, so the product market fit he found for them, was like his daily briefing emails. And then he found a second category of customers that were really interested in like his deep dive content. These are investors who needed to build theses, and make investment analysis decisions. They really wanted his like 10,000 word essays once a month. And indeed, some of them were even willing to pay for a phone call once a month, right? And so like he could conceivably build a layered product where like part of how he served this audience with the exact same expertise that he was bundling for these CEOs was to, deliver a report coupled with like a monthly webinar or phone call or something like that, and sell it for a lot more money. Then he started to discover there's this third category of like folks who were in the industry and wanted to kind of stay on top of their career, right? And like advance in their career and really like connect with other people, because he was this catalyst of other folks in the community, in this industry, essentially a community was forming around. Now, the CEOs, et cetera, they weren't interested in forming a community with each other. And the investors certainly weren't interested in talking to each other, because really this was a defensive purchase for them, right? They just needed the information to be able to bet against each other effectively. But then you had this third segment of his customer base that actually the community was the most valuable thing. They didn't really need the investor deep dives, and they didn't really need like the daily updates. They wanted to be smart on the topic. They wanted pertinent information that would advance their career. But really, honestly, they were just looking for other folks in the industry that they could connect with. And so that was then where, now he hasn't yet, but this is where we've talked about him building out community there, right? As opposed to trying to force it on these other segments. So already this guy, one guy, expertise is his product, but he's found like 3 different sort of more granular product market fits that really work for his audience, that if he were to just have one monolith product, it would certainly fall flat across his entire audience, across all the people that say follow him on Twitter, or might have signed up for his emails at some point in time. So that's his product market fit. Then you can start to think about his channel market fit. Okay, well, where do the executives hang out? And building a funnel right around this. So where do those executives hang out? How are they going to discover him? Maybe it's on Twitter. A lot of them aren't on Twitter. So where is it going to be? Well, maybe he needs to start doing interviews that are going to get quoted in places like Axios or Wall Street Journal, because that's where these executives are going to do, oh, here's this dude and he's writing about this content, and wow, he's getting all these scoops. I really got to go sign up for that. So you can see that like now you're starting to think about, how do I productize for the channel that's going to get me to the market that I want to bring in here. You think about, the career ladder, sort of mid-level folks, young folks who are just trying, like I described. Well, those folks are probably, who knows where they are? Maybe it's Twitter, maybe it's elsewhere, maybe they're on message boards, maybe, et cetera. And so thinking about, maybe it's actually IRL stuff. I mean, not during COVID, but maybe it's meetups and stuff. And that's kind of the top of funnel to pull those folks in. And that's how he's going to get channel market fit for those customers. And then you think of the investors, and like that might be Google, right? Maybe those folks are going to discover him through an SEO strategy where he's writing deep dive topics that kind of hit all the keywords that an analyst is going to be searching when they do stuff. So I say all this not supposing that any of you are going to build a similar kind of consultant industry expertise business, but you can already see how this idea of product market fit, and then channel market fit, and then if you think of products as actually not just the thing you're selling, but product is also what is part of your marketing funnel. A tweet thread is a product. How do you fit that channel with that product that then does the job of getting the lead capture? A lot of folks will put free blog posts on their site. That's a product. It's a marketing product, right? You're not charging people for it. And so when you think of like, don't just say, oh, well, the delineation of my marketing funnel is paid community and then there's like free community. Is that going to really draw the right folks in? Is that going to just basically separate the same crowd, but those who are willing to pay and those who aren't, right? Like, you need to think more innovatively about what your funnel is, your marketing funnel is, and then what kind of products you're going to put along that funnel that can pull people down. Which, I was going to kind of talk about here. This is just an interesting case study from a symphony orchestra. Again, we don't serve orchestras. I don't think any of our audience here runs an orchestra. But this case study was amazing. It's on Medium. If you just Google audience development, the long haul model. The executive director there, Audrey, she came in. This is the, what's the name of it? I think it's the California Symphony. It's up in Marin. I'm in the Bay Area right now, so it's up in Marin. And basically, at the time she came in, a symphony orchestra, they have donors, they have season ticket holders, they sell single ticket concerts, they ask for donations, etc. And what would happen was every time anything happened, they would market everything to everyone. And so they would basically send out all these, like whenever they had a big campaign, even if you only had attended one concert in your life, now you would be bombarded with requests for gifts, even though you'd only been to one concert. And she came in and she stopped all that. And she said, you can only ever market the next level in the funnel. Because basically she said, look, the idea of marketing funnel and product are the same thing. You need to take your funnel and build product at every stage of it, except maybe the very top where it's like pure marketing. Because you need to pull people down, and basically each progressive part of the audience funnel is just a slightly deeper product engagement that pulls more value out of that customer. So at the top might be, okay, we have our email list of people who have never attended a concert before, or our Facebook list or Instagram or wherever you're advertising, et cetera. We're going to market buying a single ticket. Maybe we'll even like give it to them at a discount, first ticket, a special summer concert. Maybe it's a free concert, right? That's the product to get people in. Then we can start moving down. Now we're going to sell them a second concert. Only then, once they've attended a second concert, are we allowed to market season tickets. And then only after someone buys a season ticket are we allowed to market a donation on top of the season ticket. And then only once we have people who have made one donation can we start pushing recurring donations and major gifts. So by reorienting the way they took essentially their one product, which is a symphony, but now they've priced it in a bunch of different ways. They've productized it in a bunch of different ways that now meet people where they're at different parts of the audience funnel, or marketing funnel. They were able to massively increase revenue. Even though when they're sending out those appeals for a big gift during the campaigns, the annual fundraising campaigns, they were sending out probably 10% as many emails as they used to. And in fact, the marketer is really upset about this. Like, how can I hit my KPIs? I'm not gonna have nearly as big of a list. My open rates are much, it doesn't matter. Revenue and attendance, and I forget what the numbers are, they're in the piece, skyrocketed, both relative to themselves, the previous year's self, and then also relative to all of the other symphony orchestras of the same size around the country. So again, as you're thinking about paid community, it's a paid product. It's a product offering, and it's important to think about how it fits into what the funnel is. That is it halfway through the funnel? Is it all the way at the bottom? Is it the main show that people are paying for, or is it just something that's ancillary that really keeps them there, and they're paying for something else? I don't know what all of your audiences and communities look like, and so there's probably a pretty big variety here, but yeah, something to think about. I think that's my last slide. Well, apparently this one shows all the money. Yeah, there you go. 5%. I forgot I put this in. 5% versus 34%. 34%. I mean, that by just being very disciplined about productizing the funnel, and then being very disciplined about staging it. So, okay, I think that's the last slide. Yeah, that's the last slide. So I'll stop my screen share, and yeah, there we go. So I don't know, how do we do this, Amy?
Well, if anyone has any questions, feel free to submit them to the Q&A. It looks like we have one from Jackson, and he's asking, why did Pico stop posting on Instagram in June and Twitter in October? And how will you build your funnel? Are you waiting for the relaunch?
That's that hits close to home. You're not supposed to ask questions about yeah. So those are great questions. Honestly, we made a shift. A couple things are happening. We don't have a fantastic marketing or sales department here at Pico. It basically is me part-time, and we've had a pretty incredible organic growth this year, and we've ridden on that for a while. We get like that more than takes care of the growth we've needed to have to kind of launch us into the next generation of the platform. That said, we're making pretty big investments, including new hires around marketing, and they'll be able to tackle our social media strategies with much more strategy than we ever did, which is to say not much. The other thing is also I've shifted toward me being on Twitter more than our Pico brand. And one of our responsibilities as well as being an infrastructure company is trying not to have too many strong opinions, which tend to be those that work on the engagement side. And so that's something that we have to be careful of as we grow and as we support a much broader customer base from around the world. So thank you, BJ. That's very kind words. I hope you find that useful. So, but yeah, waiting for the relaunch. Like in terms of how Pico thinks about it, we're a software company, so it's very different. But I will tell you that 90% of our payroll is engineers. So that's why we've all we do is build product. There's a lot to this sort of product. Checkout and payments and all that logic and CRM platforms. But we're reevaluating our pricing. And right now, the way our pricing works, so we'll do a kind of a live masterclass. Right now, the way our pricing works is it's free to start, free for the first 500 contacts that you have in our CRM, basically signups through our sign-up system, our lead capture system, which doubles as a login system. If someone signs up on Pico, and it's on your website, as opposed to one of our standalone landing pages, that person is also logged in at the same time. And you get the first 500 for free. And then we start charging kind of like MailChimp, or HubSpot, like $5 per every 500. And then at some point it gets cheaper and then cheaper. And then we have a flat payment processing charge if you decide to turn on payments in Pico. Not all of our customers use us for payments. And then it just becomes, 5%. We have a discount for donations. it ends up that it's really interesting to talk about this live. We haven't talked about this externally, but it ends up that creates interesting problems around who you're attracting into the product and how it affects your growth. So we designed that around. Oh, I'm sorry, I should have silenced the phone, the house phone there. We wanted to attract folks that were going to experiment, and we wanted to be able to scale with them without them having to raise money or invest a lot of fixed cost upfront in like either development, like being able to install Pico, but then also just on the enterprise side of Pico, some of our competitors on the enterprise side, like you're signing expensive contracts. We didn't want that for our customers. Cool, that's great, but it ends up that like what we end up finding is that the product that the market is pulling out of us is that folks were coming to us with already some traction, and so they were willing to pay. Maybe they didn't need it to be free to start. And what it being free to start meant was we were attracting folks as well who great, but like some of the folks we were attracting create support burdens on us that we can't actually service, but because they are a paying customer, even though a very small paying customer, it takes up a lot of our support time because we hold ourselves to a high standard of support, and that becomes extremely expensive for us to handle across our entire customer base. We have some customers that make us well into the six figures a year, and then we have some customers that make us $10. But to us, those are all paying customers. So what we're thinking about shifting in terms of pricing is, okay, well, what should our free tier look like? And then what should our paid tier look like? So that anyone who's paying us even a single cent gets access to the same level of support that we can maintain across our customer base at a good value. And so what we'll probably do is our free tier, we're going to actually make completely free, and then we're thinking, well, what kind of tools can we? Well, we can give away our pop-ups and our sign-ups and our pre-built menus and our CR. Like we can actually give away a pretty significant part of tools that other companies will charge you a lot for. I think of all the pop-up plugins out there, or like the ability to build a login menu for your site.
Mm-hmm.
Going to be completely free with Pico. And ours is really a great system. And that to us, we're hoping that gives us an edge in terms of marketing, because suddenly now you'll be able to build a gated experience on any CMS, or just do lead capture on our WYSIWYG landing pages completely free. And it's going to be a great product. And we're going to talk about it on MakerPad next year. We're going to do some tutorials. So if we give that away, but then we say, okay, but that's going to be free, which means that we're going to have a great like Pico University, and we're going to create great content in MakerPad, but no support. We can't afford to manage support for folks at that level. But as soon as you want to turn payments on, we've found that folks who are turning payments on in Pico are kind of going to make us a minimum amount of money, and they're probably willing to pay a minimum monthly cost. And as long as they're paying that minimum monthly cost, we can still, and we're talking between $100, $200 a month probably, but as long as they're willing to do that, we can service them with a pretty high standard of support, and still scale with them with that 5% fee, or whatever the fee ends up being, where we might adjust that, so that it's not going to be a massive upfront lift for them, but we still scale with them, and we're still incentivized to continue building features that grow their revenue. But meanwhile, we have this free product going around that is going to serve as a lead capture tool for us, because it's such a foundational aspect to capturing your audience relationships, whether you're pulling them from TikTok or Instagram or Twitter or wherever else, just Google. And if we're able to effectively do that, our hypothesis, of course, is that at some point you're gonna toggle on payments and create some sort of paid aspect. Maybe it's not on your website, maybe it's a community over on Circle or in Slack or somewhere else, Discourse. But the point is that as soon as you move into that paid tier, then that's a customer that really is our bread and butter, that we can kind of give the full support treatment of, and the full kind of customer success treatment of. But that also means, by the way, that we're going to be investing a lot of product engineering, probably millions of dollars worth of like engineer time in a product that is effectively completely free. And we have to be very aware of what that model is, so that we have a sense of those costs and how a customer evolves their business over time.
I mean, I think that's so hard is the pricing, especially when you are dealing with like a community or building a community around a product. It's because like you said, you don't want to keep people out of what you're building, but you also
Yeah.
want to maintain some type of quality there too. And I feel like that I really like what you mentioned and brought to all of our attention is the idea of marketing per funnel level and having a product for each step of the funnel. I think that's really helpful to view maybe an idea you're having through that lens. Because I totally relate to the idea of you go to like one show somewhere and then you can't unsubscribe from anything. And, you know, or like you just finished college and they're calling you to make a donation. And you're just like, I'm just trying to pay off my student loans right now before I can donate anything.
You've already gotten all the money that you're going to get from me for a long time. Yeah. Totally.
I'm curious for Pico, was there anything that you guys like weren't planning on doing that kind of was brought out of you as a result of product market fit?
Yeah. So, you know, we launched with a very basic product, which was, so, you know, taking a step back, when we started Pico, we had a very kind of singular hypothesis, which is that the world was willing to pay more for good content. I don't even know if we were thinking about community per se at the time, but we started talking about community about, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. But like, the world's willing to pay for good content and expertise and good experiences, much more than like anyone thinks. At the time, I was like, the future of media is dead. It's all ads, and that's going to be taken by Google and Facebook, and that's it. And at the time, we believe this very strongly. We just believe we need a better infrastructure, better tools for the supply side, for the creators, for the entrepreneurs, to go make the content and package it and price it in a way that we knew people were willing to pay. Yeah, people weren't going to go pay for 5 New York Times subscriptions, right? Mm-hmm. But that, in a way, didn't. A line I had, I guess you could say, it was pulled out. Someone, it was a journalism. We spent a lot of time in the journalism world because, honestly, at the beginning of Pico, that's where the entrepreneurial activity. That was the only place it was at. Mm-hmm. You can even see this with Substack. Like when Substack started, the first. And indeed, still the primary thrust of the revenue generation at Substack is in journalism, and we see these new buds kind of emerging of like non-journalists kind of like templating their businesses off of what was originally kind of a journalism format. Same thing with Pico, someone made a joke at a panel I was on. Is like, I bet that I was talking about product market fit, and he's like, I bet that if you look at most newspapers today, none of them have product market fit. And I was like, yeah, that's a good bet. Like most of them don't. Most of them have this idea that journalism is articles, and each article is like 500 to 3,000 words, and we're going to do this many articles per day, and we're going to deliver it once. And now, of course, we deliver it continuously, but like that's the format. It's not changed much. Like this is how journalism is delivered, which is crazy because journalism can be delivered in many ways. You look at pop-up magazines, which unfortunately they're not doing too well because of the pandemic. But before the pandemic, my God, people would line up around the block in the rain to pay $50 to see effectively 6 magazine articles performed on stage. That's incredible. Talk about product market fit for journalism, right? So you ask what was pulled out of us. I think this is kind of less interesting, but like the good, better, best pricing was definitely pulled out of us. This is not something that really magazines or newspapers ever really did. And we started to see that like the switch from paywalls to like memberships, and then you would bundle, like you'd have a basic tier, and then you'd have like a paid newsletter tier, and then you'd have like a patron tier that had kind of all these other perks. Well, now you're in good, better, best land, which is like borrowed from SaaS pricing. And then it's like, oh, this is interesting. So now we had to reorient, like we had to make multiple tiers available as a service. Not actually that trivial of a feature to build, and be able to build all the logic around upgrading and downgrading mid-month, between, and like but we built it. Group subscriptions were pulled out of us. We had folks that were starting to like, they're manually building group subscriptions, and then they were like adding free access to, like, they would send an invoice outside of Pico, and then they would like ask us, how can we give free access to these 10 people? And then we're like, oh, that looks like a group, huh? And it's like, yeah. And so we're like, why don't we just build that for you? And so we built that. And now almost all of our customers have at least one group subscription. Some of them have dozens. And it ends up that, like, when you sell to institutions, you can sell $10,000 at a time if you're doing a newsletter, or if you're doing something like that. Group subscriptions, during COVID, passes were pulled out of us, which was, we had, this yoga studio that wanted to, they had a monthly membership, but then they also wanted to offer like 1 day access to their live stream. And so we offered 1 day. So a pass to us is like a non-recurring subscription. So it's like one-time access, 1 week access, 1 month access. And I think when we went live with that, we sold like 2,000 passes in the first couple of weeks. And we're like, wow, that's amazing. Like, who would have thought? And so that was pulled out of us as well. So there's some examples of stuff that was pulled out of us, but like, I don't know if that really falls into the examples of product. Those are more features, as opposed to like product. Like,
I think it's still relevant, like the features.
It is.
Too.
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting opportunity with COVID and everything moving online. I think already before like everything became virtual, people were trying to figure out how to get creative with segmenting their communities and paywalling. But I think now with everything being on Zoom, that probably opens up so many different doors of opportunity functionality wise, like the passes. That's an awesome feature for people that are trying to, because I feel like now every business is a community in a sense with COVID. I mean,
in our view, every business is an audience business. Every business is becoming, this is why I talk about audience funnels. The new storefront for every business is an audience that you have online. And this is not going to be a transposition of like, oh, I am the local law firm in San Francisco, and now you're like the online law firm from San Francisco. No, you're going to actually have to reorient around some niche, and that niche can't be San Francisco. That niche is going to be, I specialize in media startups that are not venture backed in the United States and have this much revenue, et cetera. And now you're going to go build content to prove your expertise, build up your audience, and then you're going to basically end up offering legal services as like the main product. We had an investor that contacted us last year. This got put on hold because of COVID, but they were, they do investment research and consulting for a bunch of like family offices, big investors. And they're like, we're kind of like a media company. We're like, we sell all this information, and they're starting to think about how they could actually act and behave more like a media company, both on the acquisition side, putting free content out there, but then actually having paid content on a recurring basis. Maybe it would be for them like $1,000, $2,000 a month in order to broaden their customer base and actually expand their funnel for their like very high-end expensive consulting services and actually investment management services. So it is, every company is a community company or an audience company, or some, like, there is an aspect, I'm convinced, to most new companies. We saw the e-commerce shift with Shopify, but I think that's really just the beginning of kind of the shift to online niches, essentially, that are reorganizing the way our economy functions, basically. So
totally. We have about 6 minutes left. If anyone has any questions, or if you even want to like raise your hand and just come up and talk or ask questions, we can do that as well.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from folks if they are brave enough to talk about what they're up to.
All right, we got one. Okay.
In fact, if someone wants to volunteer to post more on our Instagram, perhaps they can. Just kidding.
All right, it looks like Supa raised a hand. How do I click on you? Are you able to see that hand? I wonder if because you're the host, you can maybe,
Oh, do I have to do it? Yeah. Okay, hold on.
yeah.
Attendees hand. Oh, Supa, allowed to talk. There we go. Hey, Supa.
Hey guys, 2 seconds. I was listening on my iPad and my computer, so I'm hoping the presentation is going to be shared, or I can watch it again. Is it shared? Yeah?
Yes, it will be, apparently.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, the recording will be posted in our circle community afterwards.
Yeah, which I'm a part of, so I'm looking forward to it. So I don't really have a list of questions, but if you've opened up the floor for us to have a conversation, right? So my personal story is I started as a teenage entrepreneur when I was 13, 14. Originally, I started doing selling sweets in school. And over the last 10 years, I've basically built a series of side hustles in music, in retail, and education, everything from a network of teenagers who sell their own sweet shops. And I'm from London, so I'm trying to make it as international as possible. But we had a network of sweet shops, had 100 shops with 5,000 kids by the time I was 18. I've then done random things like running an influencer agency, helping YouTubers and Instagrammers get better deals with brands. And then in the last 2 years, I've been more heavily focused on digital skills training for corporates and in communities. So prior to lockdown, I had an organization that was making just over 200K British sterling pounds, and we were delivering face-to-face training. And I had a network of coaches who would go to 81 locations. And last year we trained 5,000 young people, for example. Because of the pandemic, everything literally went halt because live events in the UK have literally been changed forever. But I was fortunate enough to have some cash reserve from the last couple of years of business that I've been able to kind of sit and watch the market rather than scramble to stay alive, like some of my other kind of friends in the market. So because I've done 8 different businesses, I don't have one community. I have multiple communities. They overlap. On my personal Instagram, there's 4,500. Altogether, I've got about 8,000 emails on mailing list. This summer, I went and did a cleanse. I sent like 6 tester emails to these communities, and I found that I have 800 core people who really open and engage with my content, 400 on the brand and 400 on my personal. So I've kind of said to myself, even though collectively there's about 20,000 people that I have on all my social medias, I said I'm going to focus on these 800 people who kind of are aged between 25 and 34. And the 2 kind of products I'm focused on, which I need to put onto one is business building skills, and the other one is talent building skills, taken from the last couple of years of work I've done, helping people with digital skills, and then also the work I've done with entrepreneurs. In terms of getting people to start their side hustles, I feel like I've got some ideas of stuff that people could use and find useful. The thing that I'm suffering from at the moment is information paralysis. When you know too much, you have a perfectionism about what you do. So I kind of took a gambit and said, let's actually apply for this program and, start watching these talks. And I'm loving all of the, success stories of people who just have 100 customers, 500 customers. And I suppose to kind of move forward to a question or to open for us to have a conversation, what would you advise someone like myself who has done loads of different things, is really focusing now on having a couple of little products that help entrepreneurs and creatives who are looking to start? So I've got like an ebook and a course I want to do for people who want to start side hustles. But I sometimes scare myself with putting a price on things and no one's going to buy it. And I'm just looking at my Gumroad at the moment, and we've had 17 sales, but I've not promoted it on my personal socials because I don't like how things are designed. Have you ever suffered from any of these things? Yeah, it seems like I'm watching your Twitter and stuff, and you're just going at it. You're just building, and I love it. But yeah, that's my story. Sorry if I've overspoken, but I wanted to share that because I listened to you and it was just really inspiring.
I appreciate that, and I do see we're coming up on time, so perhaps we can, take this answer off there. But Amy, if you'll permit me for a couple seconds here, I guess the word resonance really comes to me. So, by the way, I can't speak to your situation personally. I'm not that kind of entrepreneur in terms of in a way I don't even really. I'm not particularly scrappy. We just sort of like got going and got some angel investment, and then ran head first. And I have an amazing co-founder who really kind of occupies the scrappy chair much more than I. But I guess, I would say the word resonance comes to mind, and this is where the product market fit stuff, which is yes, you got to work hard and really like build build what you're doing, and at some point you just got to stay alive long enough to get lucky. That's sort of our startup mantra, is like, if you're really confident that the world is going to meet, the market's going to meet your product eventually where it's at, then it's really just about staying alive long enough and being productive in the meantime until you get that break, until the luck does find you. But you also don't want to spin your wheels at the wrong thing. And that's where like you have to think very carefully about this question of product market fit, which is, and this is why not everyone can just be a successful entrepreneur. Like the intuition of, do I have product market? I was not confident that Pico had product market fit for exactly kind of what we're, our go to market and all that, for a long, long time. Yeah. And we probably didn't for a long time, but we kind of stayed very true to where we were skating, to where we were going. We were confident in that. That's what investors had backed us for, and we're venture backed, so there's maybe a slight difference there. But like, that was the thesis that investors believed in, that we believed in, and then it was really just a question of like staying alive long enough until we got lucky. And in many ways, I still don't think we've gotten lucky yet. We're still a long, long way away from really considered, are we successful or not? But anyway, I hope that helps. And obviously happy to continue the chat offline in another forum here. So anyway, Amy, back to you.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think with the pricing, that's like I said earlier, I mean, we're still, I think, all trying to figure it out at MakerPad of like what it looks like even. I don't think it's something that anyone figures out overnight, but I would just encourage you, BJ, to just test it out and see what happens, and maybe go toward like your channel that you get the most traction on, and then just figure out what's the minimum cost to you that you're willing to part ways with. So, and then test that out, or, find a few people, give them your product and see what they think, what would they pay for it, and just do maybe a few like meetups and stuff to get feedback on what people found valuable, and then go from there. But yeah.
I'll just say, I know we're at time, but one thing that is kind of interesting is one regret I have from back in the beginning of when we were starting Pico is Nick and I did not think very carefully about market size. And now, granted, you might not be going out and trying to build a venture-backed company that like market size is almost the only question that matters to most investors. You can have product market fit, and you can scale actually and make a lot of money. But if there's no potential to serve a multi-billion-dollar market, then it's like, we're not interested. And so I wish in hindsight we had actually thought much more carefully about market size, which we didn't. We were thinking about a need that we kind of just intuited was going to be a big enough market. On the flip side, one could argue that is the Hail Mary kind of bet that one has to make in order to not just have like the merely successful venture-backed business, but to have like the Shopify type success. Who knows? We can only hope. I don't need to be Shopify size to be satisfied. In fact, I'm already quite satisfied with the impact we've had. But like, in terms of thinking, like there is a bit of like I said earlier in the broadcast about like the world's a big place. If you find product market fit, don't worry about scale. The caveat is unless you've taken investor money, and then you do need to think about, okay, there's one person on my block who eats Indian food, and your London accent makes me think about Indian food, and so I'm gonna go build an Indian restaurant, and then it ends up that that's the only person in the whole town that wants Indian food. So like at all scales, you should definitely try to size your market first. But anyway, so there is a bit. It's a dance. You've got to think a bit about market sizing too. So anyway, I've pushed things way over. But
definitely post your questions into the MakerPad community, and get some feedback from other people that might be building a community around a product, and see if they've done anything interesting in terms of testing it out. But yeah, happy to talk to you more about this, BJ, as well. But thank you, Jason, for your time. That was really interesting.
Of course, yeah.
And I know I learned a lot. So I'm looking forward to exploring more of Pico and digging into the new platform. So yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. Take care.
All right. Bye.